Radio drama. Guts Malone, the world's worst mafia boss. Episode 32, The Little Town of Andy, coming to you live on KHAOS Radio. Narrator. On the last episode of Guts Malone, the world's worst mafia boss, Guts Malone ate a 4LB beef and bean burrito and washed it down with 2 liters of orange magma gush. We now find him occupying a public toilet in the little town of Andy. Officer Andy, this is the police. We know you're in there. Guts, there's nobody in here. Officer Andy, well, if there's nobody in there, why does the door say occupied? Guts, that's a good point. Ka-chink. Guts, there. It says it's unoccupied. Are you happy now? Officer Andy, my apologies. I'll just be on my way. Wait a minute. Where did I leave my gun? Guts, you're what? Narrator. Guts kicks open the door of the public toilet and pumps old Officer Andy full of lead. He then closes the door and resumes his business. Ploop. Squee. Narrator. This episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Orange Magma Gush. The same great refreshing artificial taste, now with artificial sweeteners. Officer Andy. Open up. It's the police. Guts. No, it isn't. Officer Andy. Yes, it is. Guts. No, it isn't. Officer Andy. Yes, it is. Guts. No, it isn't. Officer Andy. Yes, it is. Guts. Yes, it is. Officer Andy. No, it isn't. Badosh. PFF. F. Narrator. Confused about what just happened, Officer Andy handcuffs himself to a picnic table. Ploopy sploofy sploof. Narrator. Guts Malone lights a cigarette, but not just any old cigarette. Nothing beats the rich, smooth taste of a Charleston cigarette. It's the only cigarette recommended by doctors. Doctor. I'm a doctor and I recommend Charleston cigarettes. They cured my asthma. Narrator. We now return you to your program. Officer Andy. This is Officer Andy. I know you're in there, Guts. Come out with your hands where I can see them. Guts. I'm not. Sploot. Guts. I'm afraid. Vamp. Guts. You have the wrong. Sploot squee? Guts. I was framed. Officer Andy. Or cut the crap, Guts. All of the evidence points to you. We found cheesy chap dust and orange magma gush all over Andy, the scene of the crime, and the murder weapon. Guts. Murder weapon. What murder weapon? Officer Andy, we found a Tommy gun with your initials on it, GM, and brass knuckles at the scene of the crime. Guts. Obvi. Plorp. Guts. Obviously. Scooty. Guts. Obviously that's a retirement gift. Your killer worked for a company called GM Officer Andy, which stands for Geodesic Maritime. Of course. How could I be so blind? But there's also the matter of the brass knuckles. These are illegal to possess, and people have spotted you wearing them. Guts. You got it all wrong, officer? Those aren't brass knuckles. That's my wedding rings. Officer Andy. Wedding rings. Guts. Yes, all 4 of my wives died mysteriously. So I had them fused together so they'd always be with me. Officer Andy. I don't know if it's your story, or if it's something in the air, but I'm crying. Guts Malone, you're free to go. I'll just leave your wedding rings here on the ground. Sorry to have bothered you. Guts. It's not a bother at all. Slew or plop plop. Officer Andy. Wait a minute. That still puts you at the scene of the crime. Guts. You can't convict me of the same crime twice. That would be a double jeopardy. Officer Andy. Oh, okay. Have a good night. Narrator. And that concludes this episode of Guts Malone, the world's worst mafia boss. Tune in for the next episode tomorrow. Applause. Narrator. Guts Malone was played by John Montague. The parts of Officer Andy, and Officer Andy were played by Andrew Andrewski. Thanks for listening, and good night.